Hello, everyone. This is the Gamer Commentator, and today I want to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons once again. Mainly because it is a subject that I really enjoy talking about since favorite games that I've been playing as of late. Um, Now, a lot of people really don't know what D&D stands for or what it actually is. So I'm going to give you a quick little uh, just a quick summary about what it is. Dungeons and Dragons, D&D or Dungeons and Dragons, if you prefer, is a tabletop role-playing game in pretty much the same vein as Pathfinder or the Star Wars RPG game, or I don't know what else. Those are just two off the top of my head. But it's basically in the same vein as those two games, in where you basically roll dice in order to playing your game, and not like it's more like Pathfinder than the Star Wars game, because the Star Wars game actually has its own custom dice, but that actually depends on what version you're talking about. There's like two that I know of so far, so if I I'm seeming a little bit distracted. There's a lot of things going on in my life, but I wanted to make this video for you guys. Anyways, I think Dungeons and Dragons is one of the best role-playing games that anyone can really try to get their hands on. And even if you can't directly get your hands on the game itself, there's a lot of ways that you can be able to play it anyways, such as through Roll20. It's an absolutely free site, and it allows for you to be able to play all different kinds of games with different kinds of people. It's not just Dungeons and Dragons. They got card games. They have board games. They have all sorts of different kinds of role-playing stuff on there. And it's a really great community. I've met some really nice people on there. I've attempted to try and DM or Dungeon Master an adventure myself, and didn't really turn out as well. So oh well. But yeah, Dungeons and Dragons isn't a game exclusively for the richer people. It could be played by people who just have a computer. Now, Dungeons and Dragons can be expensive if you let it be. When I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, I got myself the starter kit, which was like $12 thereabouts, really cheap. Came with 4 pre-made character sheets, booklets called The Lost Mines of Phandelver, and it also included in it a small guide on how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And it's a very good guide, and the adventure book is really good. It's not just dungeon delving or anything like that. It's actually got significant amounts of variety. And I've done this campaign a few times, just very little, unfortunately, since everyone that I've played with pretty much just left. But anyways, it's a really good set, and it includes some really nice dice for you to use for playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's very nice looking dice. It actually has a sort of texture to it, so it's not like just a pure color. Very nice. And I would suggest getting that if you just want to start getting into Dungeons and Dragons. The adventure booklet starts you off at level 1, and you basically level up, I think level 5 or so. I'm not sure. 5 or 6. I'm not absolutely positive, but it allows for you to basically level up fairly speedily, and it teaches players how to really play Dungeons and Dragons. And but if you really want to get into it, I suggest getting the Player's Handbook. The yeah, just basically the Player's Handbook if you just want to play as an actual character. But if you want to try dungeon mastering, you have to get the Master's Guide and the Bestiary, or the Monster Manual, if you rather call it. And all of that alone, just the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide, can cost up to around $150, but it's definitely worth getting them, especially if you want to be able to have some. If you really want to be able to play effectively, you definitely need those pieces. Right. And but if you also want a little bit more fun with it, there's also the Swords Coast Adventures booklet, which is around $30 or so. And it's another great little booklet that you can use in order to help you figure out how to make adventures a little bit better. A lot of people really like making homebrew adventures, and that's pretty much, I believe, how you're supposed to play Dungeons and Dragons. But some people like getting campaigns, and they sell them at the stores for like from $30 to like $50 each. It can be very expensive indeed. But it's definitely worth it, just being able to get the other 3 core books and being able to just play. There are sources online to where you can be able to get the character sheets that you need in order to play completely free. Just Google it up. You'll be able to find them. I have a Google Drive for that as well. My favorite sheets, which I believe are the most comprehensive. In D&D, you're allowed to use what's called skills that is attached to your primary stats. And usually on a normal character sheet, it's all in alphabetical order. And it makes it extremely difficult to figure out where the particular stats are, where the particular skills are. But in the sheet that I have, it makes it to where you can be able to just look up the stat. Like, let's say you want to use survival. You can just look down, and if you know that survival is a wisdom skill, then all you have to do is find the wisdom stat and then just look a tiny bit to the right, and you found it. It's really easy that way, and it makes things a lot more simpler. But anyways, further opinions on Dungeons and Dragons. There's some other things that I want to talk about as well, and forgive me if I'm rambling too much. It's just mind recently. But and by the way, this is all unscripted. This is just me rambling on, just talking about it. But yeah, I think Dungeons and Dragons is one of the best role-playing games that one could possibly be able to get their hands on. Pathfinder is another great series. It's far more complicated than Dungeons and Dragons by far, but Dungeons and Dragons but both have pretty much the same amount of possibilities of campaigns possible. once did a campaign based on a whole world that I created several years ago, and I actually had to make up stats for certain weapons, which were firearms, because there's no firearms in D&D version 5. So I had to make up my own stats based off of the 3.5 edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and I was able to figure out how to make my weapons work with a reasonable amount of currency for each. I still have the tables that I made up a while back. And I find that is just extremely flexible. You can do so many things with it. You can have just huge battles and just constant fighting all the time, or you can just have people like sitting around a campfire talking to each other, and it's mostly just exploratory and talking. And that's what's so great about it, is that it can basically conform to any kind of style that you want. Because the great thing about Dungeons and Dragons compared to like video game RPGs like Skyrim, actually not like Skyrim, like what's an RPG off the top of my head? Minecraft. You can't do whatever, just whatever you want in Minecraft. There is a limitation of what you can do. But with with Dungeons and Dragons, there was literally no limitations, because the game engine is literally a human mind when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. It is literally a person talking back to everyone else and making decisions about how games should go. Now, here's the thing about the DM or the GM. It stands for Dungeon Master and Game Master, respectively. Here's a misconception about the Game Master or Dungeon Master. Usually, the misconception is that it's the players versus the Game Master or the Dungeon Master. That's not entirely the case. The Dungeon Master or the Game Master, I'm going to call him the DM. The DM's job is to basically act as the game's engine, the person who is responsible for making sure that the fun happens and that everyone has a good time, by making sure that everyone gets equal opportunities to have a good time, to be able to get loot. Everyone has an opportunity to get loot and to be able to kill enemies or convince people about things and such. And granted, it's a very daunting task. Trust me, I know. But it's equally as much fun to be a Dungeon Master. Like I said, my last campaign that I did with several people was in a world that I built up for 7 years, and I had a lot of fun with it. And the characters were a lot of fun, and the players were a lot of fun. It was just awesome all around, because it was just something new, something different. And there was a lot of things happening in it. Dungeons and Dragons is not a game to where you are restricted by the Game Master, although that is a possibility if you have a crummy one. The game is primarily about, it's basically the ultimate